The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps as Marcus Chen stared at the rejection letter in his hands. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like molten steel coursing through his veins. The corporate logo of Meridian Financial gleamed mockingly from the letterhead, and beneath it, the words that would change everything. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that your application for the senior analyst position has been declined. We encourage you to continue developing your skills in your current role. 5 years. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of skipped family dinners, of brilliant strategies that had saved the company millions, all attributed to his supervisor's leadership. 5 years of watching incompetent executives get promoted while he remained trapped in middle management hell. Chen, the voice cut through the office like a blade. Victoria Blackwood's heels clicked against the marble floor with the precision of a metronome, each step echoing her authority. At 45, she commanded Meridian Financial's West Coast operations with an iron fist wrapped in designer silk. Her platinum hair was pulled back in a severe chignon, and her ice-blue eyes fixed on Marcus with the warmth of a glacier. Marcus folded the letter carefully, his movements deliberate. Ms. Blackwood, I trust you received our decision regarding your ambitious application. Her smile could have frozen champagne. I hope you understand that leadership positions require a certain pedigree, something you can't exactly purchase. At a state university, the words landed like physical blows. Marcus had clawed his way through UC Berkeley on scholarships and student loans, while Victoria had waltzed through Harvard on Daddy's trust fund. The irony wasn't lost on him that she now questioned his credentials. I see. Marcus's voice remained steady, professional. Years of dealing with corporate politics had taught him to mask his emotions, and I suppose my track record speaks for itself. Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cruel. Oh, Marcus, you're a competent analyst, I'll give you that. But let's be realistic, you'll never be rich. You don't have the vision, the connections, or frankly, the breeding for real success. Some people are born to lead, others to follow. There's no shame in knowing your place. The office fell silent except for the whisper of air conditioning and the distant hum of traffic 40 floors below. Marcus could feel the eyes of his colleagues boring into him, some sympathetic, others relieved it wasn't them in his position. Sarah Martinez from accounting looked away, her face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. Even Tom Wu, his cubicle neighbor, suddenly found his computer screen fascinating. Marcus stood slowly, his 6-foot frame unfolding with controlled grace. At 32, he still maintained the lean build of his college basketball days, though. Stress had added premature silver to his black hair. His dark eyes met Victoria's blue ones without flinching. Thank you for the feedback, he said, his voice carrying an edge that made Victoria's smile falter slightly. I'll certainly take it. Under advisement. He turned and walked toward his desk, each step measured and purposeful. Behind him, Victoria's voice carried across the office like a warning shot. Oh, and Marcus? I'll need those quarterly reports on my desk by 5. After all, competent analysts should excel at their current responsibilities before dreaming of bigger things. Marcus didn't turn around. He simply raised one hand in acknowledgement, a gesture that could have been agreement or dismissal. The ambiguity was intentional. At his desk, Marcus powered down his computer with mechanical precision. His personal items fit into a single cardboard box, a small succulent plant from his sister, a photograph of his parents at their restaurant's opening, and a leather portfolio that contained his real work. The work Victoria would never see. The work that would change everything. Marcus, wait. Sarah Martinez appeared at his elbow, her voice hushed. Are you okay? That was really harsh. Marcus managed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm fine, Sarah, really. She had no right to say those things. Your analysis saved them $12 million on the Henderson deal alone, which was credited to team leadership. Marcus replied, sliding the last item into his box. But that's corporate life, right? Sarah glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. Some of us have been talking about starting our own firm. You have the skills, the connections with clients. I appreciate the sentiment, but I have other plans. Marcus lifted the box and turned to face her. Sometimes the best revenge is proving someone wrong in a way they never see coming. Something in his tone made Sarah step back. For just a moment, she glimpsed something behind Marcus's controlled exterior, something cold and calculating and utterly determined. Marcus walked toward the elevator, past Victoria's glass-walled office where she held court with the other senior executives. She was gesticulating animatedly, probably regaling them with tales of putting the ambitious analyst in his place. Her laughter followed him all the way to the elevator. The doors slid shut with a whisper, and Marcus caught his reflection in the polished steel. The man looking back at him was still recognizable, but something fundamental had shifted. The eager, hopeful analyst who had arrived that morning was gone. In his place stood someone harder, hungrier, someone with nothing left to lose. The elevator descended through 40 floors of glass and steel, each floor representing another layer of corporate hierarchy he was leaving behind. By the time the doors opened onto the marble lobby, Marcus had made his decision. Victoria Blackwood thought she knew him, thought he was just another middle manager content to stay in his lane. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. His phone buzzed as he crossed the lobby. A text from an unknown number. Meeting tonight. 11 p.m. The address you know. Come alone. A friend. Marcus deleted the message and kept walking. Outside, the Seattle skyline stretched before him, gleaming towers of ambition and power. Somewhere among those buildings was his future a future Victoria had just inadvertently set in motion. He had work to do. The warehouse district at night was a different world from the gleaming corporate towers of downtown Seattle. Shadows pooled between buildings like spilled ink, and the only sounds were the distant hum of I-5 traffic and the occasional clatter of a freight train. Marcus parked his Honda Civic between a rusted shipping container and a chain-link fence. Checking his phone one last time, 11:03 p.m. He was late, but fashionably so. In his experience, arriving exactly on time to clandestine meetings suggested either desperation or naivety. 3 minutes late implied confidence. The address led to a nondescript warehouse with a single steel door, marked only by the number 247 in faded paint. Marcus knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 times. The door opened immediately. Chen. The woman who greeted him was perhaps 60, with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes like chips of obsidian. Dr. Elena Vasquez had once been a legend on Wall Street, a mergers and acquisitions specialist who could dismantle companies with surgical precision. Then she'd vanished from the financial world 5 years ago, leaving behind only rumors and speculation. Dr. Vasquez. Marcus stepped inside, his eyes adjusting to the dim lighting. The warehouse had been converted into something between a high-tech command center and a graduate seminar room. Screens lined the walls, displaying real-time market data, news feeds, and what looked like organizational charts of major corporations. A dozen people worked quietly at computer stations, their faces illuminated by monitor glow. "Welcome to the underground," Elena said, sealing the door behind him. Though we prefer the term alternative venture incubator, Marcus recognized some of the faces from financial news. Articles, former executives who had been forced out, whistleblowers who had been blacklisted, brilliant analysts who had been passed over one too many times. All of them shared the same look, intelligent, driven, and hungry for vindication. "I received your message," Marcus said carefully, "though I'm not sure how you got my number." Elena smiled, an expression that was equal parts warmth and predator. "Marcus, my boy, we've been watching you for quite some time. Your work on synthetic derivative instruments was brilliant. Victoria took credit for it. Your risk assessment model for emerging markets? Revolutionary. Too bad your supervisors buried it in committee. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. How do you know about derivative work? That was classified. Because David Kim brought it to us 6 months ago. Elena gestured toward a young man hunched over a computer terminal, along with documentation proving Victoria's pattern of intellectual theft. David worked in IT before his convenient downsizing. Amazing what digital footprints reveal when you know where to look. David looked up and nodded at Marcus. She's been stealing ideas for years. Emails, modified timestamps, forged. Collaboration records. I have everything. Marcus felt a surge of validation mixed with rage. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow, Victoria Blackwood is going to announce her promotion to regional director, Elena replied. Built on the foundation of stolen. Work your work primarily. And because we think you're ready to do something about it. She led him to a conference table where several others were gathered. Marcus recognized Lisa Park, a former Goldman Sachs trader who had been scapegoated during a scandal. James Rodriguez, an ex-Lehman Brothers executive who had warned about the housing bubble. And Priya Sharma, a former SEC investigator who had been forced out for being too thorough. Gentlemen, ladies, Elena announced. Meet our newest partner. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Marcus said. Of course not. You're too smart to commit without understanding the terms. Elena opened a tablet and slid it across the table. But I think you'll find our proposal intriguing. The screen displayed a complex financial model, corporate structures, investment flows, and acquisition targets. At the center was a familiar logo, Meridian Financial. You want to take down Meridian? Marcus asked. Take down? No. Elena's smile widened. We want to take it over. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Lisa Park leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. Meridian Financial is vulnerable in ways they don't even realize. Their aggressive expansion into tech lending has left them overextended. One major default could trigger a cascade failure. But they're careful, Marcus protested. Their risk management protocols were designed by you, James Rodriguez interrupted, and modified by Victoria to increase short-term profits at the expense of long-term stability. She's essentially dismantled your safety measures piece by piece. Marcus studied the financial models on the screen. The numbers told a story of corporate hubris, leveraged buyouts, risky derivatives, and a loan portfolio that looked solid on paper, but was built on increasingly shaky foundations. Even if Meridian is vulnerable, a hostile takeover would require billions in capital, Marcus said. We're talking about a company worth $12 billion. Exactly, Elena replied. Which is why we're not going after the whole company. We're going after its most profitable divisions, selectively, strategically, and completely legally. Priya Sharma activated a wall display showing Meridian's corporate structure. Meridian operates through 17 subsidiary companies across 4 market sectors. Victoria's cost-cutting measures have created artificial independence between divisions. In many cases, the subsidiaries could theoretically operate as standalone entities. Corporate rating, Marcus murmured, understanding beginning to dawn. Elegant. Corporate rating, Elena corrected. We identify undervalued divisions, acquire strategic stakes through shell companies, then engineer management buyouts. The parent company never sees us coming until it's too late. David Kim pulled up another screen showing stock ownership patterns. We've been positioning ourselves for 18 months. Small purchases, distributed across multiple entities. Nothing large enough to trigger disclosure requirements, but collectively significant. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't some fantasy of revenge, it was a meticulously planned financial operation. What's my role? You know Meridian's operations better than anyone except Victoria herself, Elena said. You understand their client relationships, their operational vulnerabilities, their decision-making processes. Most importantly, you have something we need, which is access. Lisa Park activated her laptop and showed him a series of personnel files. 3 of Meridian's division heads have been quietly expressing frustration with corporate leadership. They're loyal to the company, but not necessarily to Victoria. You've worked with all of them. Marcus recognized the names immediately. Jennifer Walsh in commercial lending, Richard Santos in investment management, and Catherine Lee in corporate finance. All brilliant executives who had watched their autonomy erode under Victoria's micromanagement. You want me to recruit them? We want you to give them an alternative, Elena said. A chance to run their divisions without corporate interference. Better compensation, equity stakes, and complete operational control. That's assuming they'd be interested in joining the corporate coup. Oh, they're interested, Priya said with a knowing smile. We've had preliminary conversations through intermediaries. They're just waiting for the right moment and the right leader. The implications hit Marcus like a physical force. You're asking me to build a new company using Meridian's own assets and personnel. We're asking you to take what's rightfully yours, Elena corrected. Your strategies, your innovations, your client relationships. Victoria has spent 5 years taking credit for your work. Now it's time to collect what you're owed with interest. James Rodriguez opened a leather portfolio and withdrew a thick document. This is a preliminary partnership agreement. You would serve as CEO of the new entity with full operational control. Initial capitalization would be $50 million. $50 million? Marcus interrupted. Where does that kind of money come from? From people who believe in evening the scales, Elena said simply. Anonymous investors who have been hurt by corporate predators like Victoria. Think of it as a crowd-funded revolution. Marcus scanned the partnership terms. The financial arrangements were generous, more generous than anything he could have imagined at Meridian. But the scope of what they were proposing was staggering. This would destroy Victoria's career, he said. Only if she's as dependent on stolen ideas as we believe, Lisa replied. If she's truly the visionary leader she claims to be, she adapt and survive. If not, she shrugged. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic. Marcus stared at the documents, feeling the weight of possibility and consequence. This was his chance not just for revenge but for validation. For proving that talent and innovation mattered more than pedigree and politics. What's the timeline? He asked. Elena smiled, recognizing the shift in his tone. 6 months to acquire controlling interests in 3 target divisions. Another 6 months to complete the management buyouts. By this time next year, you could be running a billion-dollar financial services company. And Victoria will be explaining to Meridian's board how she lost 3 of their most profitable divisions to a competitor that didn't exist 6 months earlier. Marcus picked up the pen Elena offered him. The weight of it felt disproportionate to its size, as if it contained the gravity of his entire future. One condition, he said. We do this completely above board. No shortcuts, no questionable practices. If we're going to win, we win cleanly. Agreed, Elena said immediately. In fact, I insist on it. The best revenge is success that can't be questioned or invalidated. Marcus signed his name with a flourish that surprised him with its confidence. As soon as the ink dried, he felt a transformation subtle but fundamental. The disappointed analyst who had walked out of Meridian that morning was gone. In his place sat someone who understood that power wasn't given, it was taken. Welcome to the underground, Marcus, Elena said, extending her hand. Now let's go build an empire. 3 weeks after signing with the underground, Marcus sat in the executive dining room of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, watching Richard Santos cut his salmon with surgical precision. The investment management director had aged since Marcus last saw him, new lines around his eyes, gray threading through his black hair. The stress of working under Victoria's increasingly erratic leadership was taking its toll. The Henderson portfolio restructuring was brilliant, Richard said, not looking up from his plate. Whoever designed that risk mitigation strategy understood market psychology better than anyone I've worked with. Marcus smiled. I'm glad it worked out. Victoria claims it was her idea, of course. Richard's knife paused mid-cut. But Victoria thinks diversification means owning stocks in companies that start with different letters of the alphabet. The comment hung in the air between them. Marcus had known Richard for 4 years, long enough to recognize when the older man was testing waters. Richard, can I ask you something hypothetically? Hypothetically. Richard set down his knife and finally met Marcus's eyes. I'm listening. If you could run your division without corporate interference, complete autonomy, better compensation, equity stake, would you be interested? Richard's poker face was excellent, but Marcus caught the slight widening of his pupils. That's quite a hypothetical. Are we talking about a management buyout scenario? Something like that. The non-compete clauses in our contracts only apply to directly competitive activities within specific geographic regions, Marcus said smoothly. They say nothing about acquiring the division through legitimate financial means. Richard leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with new interest. You've given this some thought. I've given it considerable thought. And you have backing for this hypothetical venture? Significant backing. Richard was quiet for a long moment, watching the lunch crowd flow around them. Finally, he spoke. Victoria called me into her office yesterday. Wants to restructure my entire operation, centralized decision-making, reduce my team by 30% and implement her new efficiency protocols. Marcus had heard about Victoria's efficiency protocols. They essentially strip division heads of all meaningful authority while making them responsible for increasingly impossible performance targets. What did you tell her? That I'd consider it. Richard's smile was grim. But between you and me, I've been considering a lot of things lately, including whether there might be opportunities elsewhere. There might be, hypothetically. Richard finished his wine and signaled for the check. Marcus, I assume this conversation never happened. What conversation? Good. Richard stood and extended his hand. But if your hypothetical situation becomes reality, I'd be very interested in hearing more details. As Richard left, Marcus felt the first surge of genuine excitement since leaving Meridian. 1 down, 2 to go. His phone buzzed as he walked back to his car. A text from Elena. Emergency meeting. Tonight, come armed with good news. The warehouse was more active than usual when Marcus arrived. Additional screens had been installed, and several new faces worked at computer terminals. Elena met him at the door, her expression tense. We have a problem, she said without preamble. And an opportunity. She led him to the main conference area where the core team had assembled. David Kim looked particularly agitated, his usual calm demeanor replaced by nervous energy. Victoria's moving faster than we anticipated, Elena announced. David intercepted some communications this morning. She's planning to announce a major corporate restructuring next week. David activated a screen showing internal Meridian emails. She's going to consolidate all West Coast operations under direct corporate control. No more autonomous divisions. No more independent decision-making. Everything flows through her office. Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. She's eliminating the division structure entirely, which makes our acquisition strategy much more complicated, Lisa Park added. Can't buy out divisions that no longer exist as separate entities. But, Elena said, raising a finger, it also creates a massive opportunity. If she centralizes everything, she also concentrates all the risk. One significant failure could bring down the entire West Coast operation. Priya Sharma pulled up financial projections on her laptop. We've been modeling various scenarios. If we can trigger a crisis that exposes the fundamental weaknesses in Meridian's portfolio weaknesses you identified in your original risk assessments, we might be able to acquire assets at fire sale prices. You're talking about deliberately destabilizing a financial institution, Marcus said slowly. We're talking about exposing existing instabilities, Elena corrected. Meridian has been hiding their problems behind creative accounting and regulatory arbitrage. We're just shining a light on what's already there. James Rodriguez opened a thick file folder. 3 of Meridian's largest corporate clients are in more trouble than their financial statements indicate if those loans go bad simultaneously. It would trigger exactly the kind of cascade failure you warned about in your risk reports, Lisa finished. The reports Victoria buried. Marcus studied the client files. Tech Global Industries, Pinnacle Development, and Harbison Manufacturing, all companies he had flagged as high-risk investments during his time at Meridian. All companies Victoria had insisted on lending to despite his warnings. How do we know they're in trouble? Because 2 of them have already approached us for alternative financing, Elena said with a satisfied smile. They're trying to refinance their Meridian loans before the problems become public. The elegant simplicity of it struck Marcus like a physical blow. They wouldn't need to destroy anything. They would simply allow Victoria's poor decisions to reach their natural conclusion, then position themselves to benefit from the aftermath. What's the timeline? Tech Global's quarterly report comes out in 2 weeks, David said. Their numbers are going to be catastrophic. Pinnacle is hemorrhaging cash on their Phoenix development project. And Harbison just lost their biggest client to overseas competition. 3 dominoes, Elena said, all lined up and ready to fall. The question is whether we're positioned to catch what falls with them. Marcus felt the familiar surge of analytical clarity that had always served him best in crisis situations. The pattern was clear. Victoria had created exactly the scenario he had warned against, driven by greed and short-sighted thinking. We'll need to move fast on recruiting the division heads, he said. If Victoria's restructuring happens first, we lose our window. Already in motion, Lisa replied. Jennifer Walsh has agreed to a meeting tomorrow. Catherine Lee is considering our approach. And Richard? Richard's interested. Very interesting. Elena's smile was predatory. Then we accelerate the timeline. 2 weeks to position ourselves for the acquisition. 1 month to complete the deals. Victoria won't know what hit her until it's too late to stop it. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of his new partners, brilliant, determined, and utterly committed to proving that merit could triumph over privilege. For the first time since leaving Meridian, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Let's do it, he said. Let's show Victoria Blackwood what real leadership looks like. Jennifer Walsh's corner office on the 32nd floor of Meridian Tower offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, but she wasn't admiring the scenery. The commercial lending director was staring at her computer screen with the expression of someone watching a building burn down. The Tech Global preliminary numbers just came in, she said without looking up as Marcus entered. It's worse than we thought. Marcus closed the door behind him and activated the white noise generator Jennifer kept for sensitive conversations, a necessity in Victoria's surveillance-happy corporate culture. How much worse? 60 million in quarterly losses. Their division is worthless. Their cloud services are hemorrhaging clients, and their cryptocurrency venture lost 40 million in a single hack. Jennifer finally looked up, her green eyes grim. Marcus, when this goes public next week, it's going to trigger panic selling across the entire tech sector. And Meridian's exposure? 200 million in direct loans, plus another 100 million in syndicated deals. Victoria structured the loans as secured debt, but Tech Global's assets are vastly overvalued. We'll be lucky to recover 30 cents on the dollar. Marcus felt a familiar mixture of vindication and frustration. He had flagged Tech Global as high risk 18 months ago, citing their aggressive expansion strategy and questionable revenue projections. Victoria had overruled him, seduced by Tech Global's celebrity, CEO, and the promise of high-margin lending. Fees. Have you told Victoria? Jennifer's laugh was bitter. I tried. She's in crisis management mode, spinning scenarios where Tech Global somehow recovers, talking about restructuring their debt, even suggesting we double down with bridge financing. Bridge financing? For a company that's essentially insolvent? Her exact words were, sometimes you have to bet big to win big. She's completely lost touch with reality. Marcus moved to the window, watching the ferry traffic in the bay below. The pieces were falling into place exactly as Elena had predicted. Victoria's arrogance and incompetence were creating the perfect storm. Jennifer, we need to talk about your future. She swiveled her chair to face him fully. I was wondering when you'd get to that. Word is you've been having interesting conversations with Richard and Catherine. Word travels fast. Only among people who are tired of watching the narcissist destroy everything we've built. Jennifer stood and joined him at the window. Marcus, I've been in commercial lending for 15 years. I've never seen risk management this reckless. Victoria is going to bring down the entire West Coast operation. What if I told you there was an alternative? I'd say I'm listening. Marcus outlined the Underground's proposal, the management buyout structure, the financial backing, the vision of a new kind of financial services company built on actual competence rather than corporate politics. You're talking about corporate warfare, Jennifer said when he finished. I'm talking about corporate evolution. The best people, the best ideas, the best practices freed from the constraints of dysfunctional management. Jennifer was quiet for several minutes, studying the legal documents Marcus had provided. Her analytical mind was clearly working through implications and possibilities. The timing would have to be perfect, she said finally. If we move too early, Victoria might implement countermeasures. Too late, and we get caught in the collapse. We're thinking 4 weeks. Enough time for the market to fully digest Tech Global's failure, but before Meridian's board panic and clean house. 4 weeks, Jennifer nodded slowly. I can work with that. My team is solid. They'll follow me wherever I go. And honestly, most of them are already updating their resumes. So you're in? Jennifer extended her hand with a smile that reminded Marcus why she was one of the most successful commercial lenders on the West Coast. I'm in. When do we start? The crisis hit with surgical precision. Tech Global's quarterly report, released on a Tuesday morning, sent shockwaves through the financial markets. The company's stock dropped 60% in the first hour of trading, triggering a broader sell-off in the technology sector. Marcus watched the carnage unfold from the Underground's command center, surrounded by screens showing real-time market data. The atmosphere was tense but focused. This was what they had been preparing for. Meridian stock is down 12% and falling, Lisa Park reported from her trading station. The market is starting to price in their Tech Global exposure. Any official response from Victoria? Elena asked. David Kim pulled up Meridian's internal communications. She's called an emergency executive meeting for this afternoon. Her assistant's calendar shows back-to-back damage control calls with investors and analysts. Marcus felt a cold satisfaction, watching Victoria's carefully constructed world begin to crumble. But there was no time for self-indulgence. They had work to do. Status on the acquisition financing? $60 million confirmed, another $40 million committed pending final approvals, James Rodriguez replied. Our investors are very pleased with the preliminary projections. Elena moved to the central display showing their target acquisition map. Jennifer's division handles 40% of Meridian's commercial portfolio. Richard's group manages 60% of their investment assets. Catherine's corporate finance team oversees all major client relationships. If we can extract those 3 divisions, we basically got the entire West Coast operation, Marcus. Finished. Victoria will be left with empty offices and a pile of bad debt. Priya Sharma looked up from her legal documents. I've confirmed the regulatory pathways. As long as we structure the acquisitions properly, there's no way for Meridian to block them. Corporate law is quite clear on management buyout rights. The afternoon brought more bad news for Meridian. Pinnacle Development announced delays in their Phoenix project, citing unforeseen engineering challenges, a euphemism for we discovered the soil conditions make construction impossible. Their stock dropped 30%, dragging Meridian's lending portfolio deeper into the red. 2 down, 1 to go, Elena murmured, watching the market data scroll past. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at Pike Place. 1 hour. See Catherine Lee. The corporate finance director had been the most cautious of his 3 targets, unwilling to commit without seeing how the crisis unfolded. Apparently, she'd seen enough. Pike Place market, after business hours, was a different world from the tourist-packed daytime chaos. Marcus found Catherine in a quiet corner of the main building, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. The stress was getting to everyone at Meridian, Marcus. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. I assume you've seen the preliminary damage assessments. I have. 300 million in potential losses. Possibly more if the Harbison situation deteriorates further. Catherine's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee. Victoria is talking about emergency asset sales, staff reductions, maybe even closing the Portland office entirely. And your recommendation? My recommendation is that this is a systemic failure of leadership, and continuing to follow Victoria's guidance is professional suicide. Catherine met his eyes directly. She's scheduled a meeting with me tomorrow morning. I want to discuss right-sizing my operation. Marcus understood. Victoria was preparing to make Catherine the scapegoat for the crisis, blaming the corporate finance division for inadequate due diligence on deals Victoria had personally championed. What are you going to tell her? Catherine's smile was grim but determined. That I'm exploring alternative employment opportunities, effective immediately. And if I told you those opportunities might involve running your own division, with complete autonomy and significant equity upside, I'd say I'm ready to hear details. Marcus pulled out the partnership documents Elena had prepared, customized for Catherine's specific situation and expertise. As she read through the terms, he watched her expression change from cautious interest to genuine excitement. This is comprehensive, she said finally. You've really thought through every angle. We've had good advisors. Who's we? Marcus gave her the edited version, the Underground's mission, the financial backing, the vision of a new model for financial services. He emphasized the legitimate business opportunity while downplaying the revenge element, though Catherine was smart enough to read between the lines. You're not just starting a new company, she said. You're declaring war on Victoria. I'm declaring independence from a dysfunctional system that rewards incompetence and punishes excellence. Catherine folded the documents carefully and slipped them into her briefcase. I need to think about this. Of course. But Catherine, the window for this opportunity is closing fast. Once Victoria starts her restructuring, it becomes much more difficult to extract valuable assets and personnel. How long do I have? 2 weeks, maybe less. Catherine stood, her decision process clearly still ongoing. Marcus, this could be the opportunity of a lifetime. Or it could be career suicide. Sometimes they're the same thing. As Catherine walked away, Marcus felt the momentum building. 3 key players, 3 different responses, but all moving in the same direction. Victoria had created this crisis through her arrogance and incompetence. Now it was time to let her live with the consequences. His phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Harbison just announced layoffs. The cascade is accelerating. Time to move. Marcus deleted the message and headed back to his car. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Victoria Blackwood stood at the head of Meridian's main conference room like a general surveying a battlefield, which, Marcus reflected from his position near the back, wasn't far from the truth. The emergency all-hands meeting had drawn every senior manager in the West Coast operation, their faces reflecting varying degrees of concern, confusion, and barely concealed panic. I want to address the rumors and speculation that have been circulating. Victoria began, her voice carrying its usual authority despite the circumstances. Yes, we are facing some challenges with certain portfolio companies. Yes, the market has overreacted to recent developments. But Meridian Financial has weathered worse storms than this. Marcus caught Jennifer Walsh's eye across the room. Her slight headshake conveyed volumes. Victoria was still in denial about the magnitude of the crisis. Tech Global represents less than 3% of our total lending portfolio, Victoria continued. Pinnacle Development setbacks are temporary. And while Harbison Manufacturing is experiencing some difficulty, their fundamentals remain sound. Richard Santos cleared his throat. Victoria, our internal assessments suggest the exposure might be more significant than our internal assessments. Victoria cut him off sharply. Reflect worst-case scenarios designed to satisfy regulatory requirements. In the real world, we work with our clients to find solutions. Marcus watched the room's dynamics with fascination. Victoria's aggressive dismissal of legitimate concerns was driving a wedge between her and the very people she needed most. Several senior managers were exchanging glances that spoke of private conversations and growing doubts. Which brings me to our strategic response, Victoria said, activating the room's main display. I'm implementing immediate operational changes, designed to strengthen our position and demonstrate confidence to the market. The organizational chart that appeared on screen sent a visible ripple of shock through the room. Victoria had indeed followed through on her restructuring threat. Commercial lending, investment management, and corporate finance were being absorbed into a single integrated services division under her direct control. Effective Monday, all major client relationships will be managed through my office, Victoria announced. This will eliminate redundancy, streamline decision-making, and ensure consistent messaging to our stakeholders. Jennifer Walsh raised her hand. What about existing client relationships? Some of these accounts have been managed by the same teams for years. Change is never easy, Victoria replied with practiced sympathy. But our clients will appreciate the enhanced level of senior attention their accounts will receive. Marcus could see the horror in Jennifer's eyes. Victoria was proposing to personally manage relationships with dozens of major clients, an impossible task that would inevitably lead to neglect and dissatisfaction. Questions about specific operational details can be addressed in individual meetings, Victoria continued. My assistant will be scheduling one-on-one sessions with all department heads over the next week. The meeting dissolved into forced smiles and murmured acceptance, but Marcus could feel the undercurrent of rebellion. Victoria had just accelerated their timeline considerably. She's lost her mind, Jennifer said without preamble as she entered the small conference room where Marcus was waiting. It was after 7 p.m., and most of Meridian's staff had gone home, leaving the building quiet except for the hum of climate control systems. Completely and utterly lost her mind, Richard Santos agreed as he joined them. The investment management director looked like he hadn't slept in days. I've been running numbers all afternoon. If she centralizes client management the way she's proposing, we'll lose 20% of our accounts within 6 months. Catherine Lee arrived last, her usual composure cracked around the edges. I just got off a call with Harrison Industries. They're concerned about the leadership changes and want assurance about continuity of service. What did you tell them? Marcus asked. That we're committed to maintaining the highest levels of client service. Catherine's smile was bitter. Which is true, even if it won't be at Meridian. The 3 division heads sat around the small table, each carrying the weight of impossible decisions. Marcus had called this meeting ostensibly to discuss transition logistics, but he could see they were all past the point of needing persuasion. The Underground's legal team has finalized the acquisition structure, Marcus said, distributing thick folders to each of them. Shell companies registered in Delaware, funding confirmed through a Cayman Islands investment vehicle, regulatory approvals in progress. Jennifer opened her folder and scanned the documents. Clean acquisition of commercial lending assets, full staff transfer, existing client relationships maintained. This is comprehensive. Elena's team has been planning this for months, Marcus replied. They've thought through every angle. Richard studied the financial projections. Base salary plus 20%, equity stake starting at 5% with performance escalators. Marcus, this is more than generous. It's what talent is actually worth in a meritocracy. Catherine looked up from the legal documents. What? About non-compete clauses? Carefully structured to avoid any violations. We're not competing with Meridian. We're acquiring assets that Meridian is effectively abandoning through mismanagement. The room fell silent as each of them processed the magnitude of what they were contemplating. This wasn't just changing jobs, it was corporate warfare at the highest level. When? Jennifer asked finally. Friday. This Friday? Richard's eyes widened. That's 4 days. Victoria's restructuring takes effect Monday. If we wait longer, she'll have legal grounds to claim we're stealing company assets. But if we execute the acquisitions before her reorganization is implemented, we're simply buying divisions that still exist as separate entities, Catherine. Finished. Brilliant. Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with high-stakes strategic planning. Jennifer, your clients need to be contacted Thursday afternoon, informed that their accounts are being transferred to a new entity that will provide enhanced service. They'll need documentation, transition plans, already prepared. Elena's team has been modeling this scenario for weeks. Richard leaned back in his chair. What about Victoria? She's going to fight this. With what? Marcus asked. By Friday evening, 60% of Meridian's West Coast assets will be under new management. Victoria will be left explaining to the board how she lost the most profitable parts of her operation to a competitor that didn't exist a month ago. Should try to block the transfers, Catherine warned. She can try. But Priya Sharma has confirmed the legal pathways. Management buyouts are protected under Delaware corporate law, and Meridian's own corporate structure actually facilitates asset transfers between affiliated entities. Jennifer smiled for the first time in days. She created the very mechanism we're using to escape her. Poetic justice, Richard agreed, or just justice. Marcus distributed final packets containing detailed transition timelines, client contact scripts, and staff notification procedures. The next 4 days would require military precision, but the foundation was solid. One last thing, he said as they prepared to leave. Complete operational security until Friday. No emails, no phone calls, no discussions with anyone outside. This room. Victoria has spies everywhere, and she's paranoid enough to monitor communications. Understood, Catherine replied. But Marcus, what happens if something goes wrong? If Victoria discovers what we're planning? Marcus met her eyes steadily. Then we find out if we're as smart as we think we are. Thursday afternoon brought the kind of Seattle drizzle that made everything look gray and uncertain. Marcus sat in a rented BMW outside Meridian Tower, watching the steady flow of employees leaving for the day. His earpiece crackled with status. Updates from the Underground's coordination team. Phoenix team in position. Lisa Park's voice was calm and professional. Harbison Manufacturing executives have confirmed the asset transfer meeting for tomorrow morning. Portland team standing by, David Kim reported. All technical infrastructure ready for cutover. Legal documentation finalized, Priya Sharma. Confirmed from her law office downtown. Acquisition papers filed with the Delaware Secretary of State as of 4 p.m. Eastern. Marcus checked his watch. 5:47 p.m. In 13 hours, they would execute the most audacious corporate acquisition in recent memory. But first, they had to survive the night. Blackbird is moving. Elena's voice cut through the chatter. Blackbird was their code name for Victoria, whose black BMW was pulling out of Meridian's executive parking garage. Heading north on 4th Avenue, Marcus started his engine and fell into traffic 3 cars behind Victoria's sedan. The surveillance felt surreal, like something from a spy movie rather than corporate warfare. But Elena had insisted on monitoring Victoria's movements during the critical final hours. Victoria's BMW turned onto Pine Street, then into the parking garage of an upscale restaurant. Marcus parked across the street and activated his phones. Camera zoom. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see Victoria joining a table of familiar faces, Meridian's board members, gathered for what appeared to be an emergency dinner meeting. "She's meeting with the board," Marcus reported. "Full attendance from what I can see. Any indication they know about tomorrow?" Elena asked. Marcus watched Victoria's animated gestures and the increasingly grim expressions around the table. "Hard to tell, but she seems to be in crisis management mode. Probably trying to shore up support before the quarterly numbers go public." His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "All client notifications sent. Responses are uniformly positive. Harrison Industries wants to schedule a celebration dinner." Another message from Richard. "Investment portfolio transfers initiated. Should be complete by market open tomorrow." And finally, Catherine. "Corporate accounts secured. 3 major clients have already expressed relief about the transition." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place exactly as planned. Victoria was fighting yesterday's war while they were winning tomorrow's. Marcus. Elena's voice had an edge. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "David's. Monitoring Meridian's network traffic. Someone just accessed the employee database and downloaded complete personnel files for all 3 target divisions." Marcus felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Victoria? Unknown user, but the access came from her executive terminal. She knows, she suspects. The question is whether she has enough information to stop us. Marcus watched through his telephoto lens as Victoria suddenly stood up from the dinner table, her phone pressed to her ear. Even from across the street, he could see the fury in her body language. "She's making calls," he reported. "Multiple calls. All teams. This is Phoenix," Elena broadcast. "Accelerate timeline. We go live at midnight." Midnight? Marcus checked his watch again. "That's 6 hours early. And 6 hours before Victoria can implement countermeasures." "Marcus, I need you to get to the command center, now." The Underground's warehouse was a hive of activity when Marcus arrived. Additional personnel had been called in, and multiple. Screens showed real-time data feeds from banks, regulatory agencies, and corporate databases. Elena met him at the door, her expression grim but determined. "Victoria's activated Meridian's crisis response protocol," she said without preamble. "Emergency board authority, asset freeze procedures, the works. She's trying to lock down everything before morning." "Can she stop the transfers?" Not if we execute before her emergency orders take effect. Delaware corporate law requires 24 hours notice for asset freezes, and she just filed the paperwork at 7 p.m. Priya Sharma looked up from her bank of legal documents. I've confirmed the timing. We have until 7 p.m. tomorrow to complete all transfers. After that, Meridian can block any additional asset movements. Which means we need to execute everything tonight, Elena concluded. Complete corporate acquisition in under 6 hours. The scale of what they were attempting hit Marcus like a physical blow. Corporate acquisitions normally took months of due diligence, regulatory review, and careful negotiation. They were proposing to do it in a single night. Is it possible? We're about to find out, Elena replied. James, what's our funding status? James Rodriguez consulted his trading screens. 100 million confirmed and available for immediate transfer. Our investors are standing by for final authorization. David, technical infrastructure. All systems are green. New corporate network configured. Client data migration tools ready. Staff transition protocols loaded. Lisa, market positioning. Shell. Companies activated, acquisition vehicles funded, regulatory notifications filed. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Elena turned to Marcus, her dark eyes intense. This is your decision. We can abort now and try again later, or we can roll the dice on the biggest financial operation any of us have ever attempted. Marcus thought about Victoria's dismissive laughter, her casual destruction of his career, her arrogant assumption. That talent without pedigree was worthless. Then he thought about Jennifer, Richard, and Catherine, brilliant professionals trapped in a dysfunctional system that rewarded incompetence. We go, he said, tonight. Elena's smile was fierce and predatory. Then let's steal ourselves a financial empire. The first transfer executed at 12:17 a.m. Marcus watched the confirmation codes scroll across his screen as $50 million. Moved from an anonymous Cayman Islands account to the newly formed Pacific Northwest Financial Services Corporation. In the space of 30 seconds, the underground had more liquid capital than most regional banks. Commercial lending division acquisition complete, Jennifer reported from her station. She had arrived at the warehouse at 11 p.m., her laptop bag stuffed with client files and essential documentation. Asset transfer confirmed, client accounts migrated, staff notifications sent. How many employees? Elena asked. 47, including support staff. 38 have confirmed they're joining the new company. The rest are either retiring or have other plans. Marcus felt a surge of vindication. Jennifer's team was following her not out of loyalty to Meridian, but because they trusted her leadership and vision. This wasn't corporate poaching, it was liberation. Investment management assets secured, Richard announced from across the room. He looked exhausted but exhilarated, like a marathon runner approaching the finish line. Portfolio value approximately $1.2 billion, all properly transferred through existing custodial arrangements. Any client resistance? Elena asked. Just the opposite. Most of them have been quietly questioning Meridian's direction for months. They're relieved to have continuity of management. David Kim's fingers flew across his keyboard as he monitored Meridian's network systems. Victoria is trying to access the asset management system, but her emergency authorizations won't be processed until business hours. She's locked out. At 1:43 a.m., Catherine completed the corporate finance division transfer. Her acquisition was the most complex, involving ongoing client relationships, active deals, and regulatory compliance requirements. But Elena's legal team had prepared for every contingency. $63 million in transaction fees and advisory services transferred to Pacific Northwest Financial, Catherine reported. All active deals properly disclosed to clients, all regulatory requirements satisfied. Staff retention? 85%. The ones we're losing are either Victoria loyalists or people close to retirement anyway. Priya Sharma was monitoring regulatory feeds from her laptop, ensuring their activities remained within legal boundaries. The Delaware Secretary of State has confirmed all corporate filings, SEC notifications processed. Banking regulatory approvals. Pending but not required for completion. By 3 a.m., they had effectively dismantled 60% of Meridian's West Coast operation. The most valuable assets, the best personnel, and the strongest client relationships now belong to a company that hadn't existed 12 hours earlier. Victoria is making more calls, David reported. Phone records show contacts with board members, legal counsel, and what looks like a crisis management firm. Let her call, Elena said with satisfaction. By the time anyone gets to an office tomorrow morning, this will be a fait accompli. Marcus watched the final confirmations populate his screen. Pacific Northwest Financial Services Corporation now. Controlled $1.8 billion in assets, employed 127 people, and served over 200 corporate clients. It was already one of the largest independent financial services companies on the West Coast. "Gentlemen, ladies," Elena announced to the room, "we have just executed the cleanest corporate acquisition in modern history. No hostile takeover, no regulatory battles, no shareholder lawsuits. Just superior talent choosing to work for superior leadership." The warehouse erupted in cheers and applause. Marcus felt a moment of pure triumph. They had actually done it. They had turned Victoria's arrogance against her and built something extraordinary from the wreckage of her incompetence. But the night wasn't over yet. At 4:15 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the caller ID, and he let it go. To voicemail. She called back immediately. And again, on the fourth call, he answered. "Hello, Victoria. You bastard." Her voice was raw with fury and something that might have been panic. "You absolute bastard. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Don't you dare play innocent with me. I know what you've done. I know about your little company, your stolen assets, your poached employees." Marcus put the call on speaker so the room could hear. Elena gestured for silence. "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Marcus said calmly. Pacific Northwest Financial Services acquired certain assets through legitimate business transactions, all perfectly legal. Legal? Victoria's laugh was hysterical. "You've destroyed my company. You've stolen everything I've built." "I haven't stolen anything, Victoria. I've simply provided a better alternative for talented people who were tired of being undervalued. This isn't over. I'll fight this. I'll sue you into bankruptcy. You'll what?" Marcus's voice hardened. "You'll explain to Meridian's board how you lost your most profitable divisions to a competitor that didn't exist yesterday. You'll justify why your top performers all abandoned ship simultaneously." The line was quiet except for Victoria's ragged breathing. "You want to know the beautiful part, Victoria? I didn't have to steal anything. I just gave people what you never could: respect, autonomy, and fair compensation for their contributions. I made you," Victoria hissed. "Everything you know. You learned at Meridian." "You're right. I learned a great deal at Meridian. I learned that talent without pedigree gets you nowhere in a corrupt system. I learned that incompetent leadership can destroy years of careful work. And I learned that sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to replace it entirely." Marcus ended the call and turned off his phone. Around the room, his partners and colleagues were staring at him with expressions of awe and respect. That, Elena said softly, was the sound of an empire crumbling. Friday morning brought chaos to Meridian Tower. Marcus watched from across the street as employees gathered in confused clusters outside the building's main entrance. Word of the overnight exodus had spread through social media and industry networks with viral speed. By 9 a.m., 3 local news crews had set up cameras to document the unfolding corporate drama. Meridian Financial in crisis scrolled across the ticker on the building's electronic news display. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Emergency board meeting called for 10 a.m. Victoria's trying to spin this as corporate sabotage. Another message from Richard. Industry analysts are calling it the cleanest corporate acquisition in decades. Stock futures are up 12%. Marcus smiled and crossed the street toward Meridian's lobby. It was time for the final act. The executive floor was in chaos when Marcus arrived. Victoria's assistant, normally the picture of professional composure, looked haggard and overwhelmed. Her phone rang constantly, and stacks of message slips covered her desk. "Marcus?" She looked up in confusion. "I thought you... aren't you with that new company now?" "I am, but I have some business to conclude with Miss Blackwood. She's in meetings all morning. The board, the lawyers, the crisis management. Team ... I'll wait." Marcus settled into one of the leather chairs outside Victoria's office, pulling out his tablet to review the morning's financial news. The story was spreading beyond business media. CNN was calling it the most elegant corporate coup in recent memory, while the Wall Street Journal had already published an analysis titled, "When Talent Walks, the Meridian Lesson." At 11:47 a.m., Victoria's office door opened, and a stream of grim-faced executives filed out. Board members, senior partners from Meridian's law firm, and several people Marcus didn't recognize but who had the unmistakable look of crisis management specialists. Victoria appeared last, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Her platinum hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup was smudged, and her designer suit looked like she'd slept in it. When she saw Marcus, her face went through a series of emotions: shock, rage, and finally resignation. "Come to gloat?" She asked. "Come to make you an offer." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "An offer?" "Marcus, in case you missed it, you've just destroyed my career. What could you possibly offer me?" Marcus stood and handed her a sealed envelope. "Open it." Victoria's hands shook slightly as she broke the seal and unfolded the documents inside. Marcus watched her face as she read, seeing confusion replace anger. This is a job offer. Senior Vice President of Strategic Development, Pacific Northwest Financial Services. Base salary of $300,000, plus equity participation. Victoria stared at the papers. "You're offering me a job? After what you've done to me?" "I'm offering you a chance to learn what real leadership looks like." "I don't understand." Marcus gestured toward her office. "May I?" Victoria nodded numbly, and led him inside. The space that had once intimidated him now seemed smaller, less impressive. The view was still spectacular, but the power it represented was gone. "Victoria, you're not a stupid person," Marcus began. "You have good instincts about market trends, and you understand client psychology. Your problem isn't lack of intelligence, it's lack of wisdom." "Wisdom?" "You never learned that true leadership isn't about controlling people, it's about unleashing their potential. You never understood that respect can't be demanded, only earned. And you never realized that sustainable success comes from building up others, not tearing them down." Victoria sank into her chair, the fight draining out of her. "So this is your revenge? Offering me a subordinate position in the company I could have run? This isn't revenge, Victoria. Revenge would be watching you fail and doing nothing about it. This is an opportunity for both of us." Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the city where Pacific Northwest Financial was already establishing its presence. "We're going to build something extraordinary. A financial services company that actually serves its clients, rewards its employees, and contributes to the community. We could use someone with your skills properly directed." "And if I refuse?" Marcus turned back to face her. "Then you explain to the unemployment office how you lost $1 billion operation to a team of people you dismissed as inferior." Victoria was quiet for a long time, staring at the job offer. Finally, she looked up. Why would you want me after everything that's happened? Because everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Because talent should be developed, not wasted. And because the best way to defeat an enemy is to turn them into an ally. Victoria's smile was sad but genuine. You really have changed, haven't you? The Marcus I knew would have wanted to see me burn. The Marcus you knew was still learning who he wanted to become. Marcus knows that destruction is easy, creation is hard. 6 months later, Pacific Northwest Financial Services occupied 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Seattle's South Lake Union District. The company's growth had been meteoric, from 127 employees to over 400, from $1.8 billion in assets to nearly $5 billion, from a regional player to a national presence. Marcus stood in his corner office, reviewing the quarterly reports that would be released the next morning. The numbers were staggering: 30% revenue growth, client satisfaction scores in the 95th percentile, and employee retention rates that were the envy of the financial industry. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Victoria entered, carrying her own stack of reports and wearing an expression of professional satisfaction that had become increasingly common over the past months. "The strategic development numbers," she said, placing the documents on his desk. "We've identified 47 potential acquisition targets, secured preliminary agreements with 12 regional firms, and established partnership frameworks with 3 international institutions." Marcus reviewed the summary page. Victoria's work had been exceptional, creative, thorough, and strategically sound. Her transformation from autocratic micromanager to collaborative strategic thinker had been remarkable to witness. "The Munich opportunity looks particularly interesting," he noted. "I think so too. European expansion would give us access to markets that are underserved by traditional American firms." Victoria settled into the chair across from his desk. "Marcus, I want to thank you again for the opportunity. 6 months ago I thought my career was over. 6 months ago you were destroying your career through your own choices. What changed wasn't your circumstances, it was your approach." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "I've been reflecting on that a lot lately. At Meridian, I was so focused on controlling outcomes that I forgot to trust the people around me. Here, I've learned that the best results come from giving talented people the resources they need and getting out of their way." Marcus smiled. "It only took you 30 years to figure out what good managers learn in their first week. Better late than never." A gentle chime from Marcus's computer announced an incoming video call. Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen, calling from the Underground's new headquarters in San Francisco. "Marcus, Victoria." Elena nodded to both of them. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Perfect timing," Marcus replied. "We were just reviewing the quarterly numbers." "Excellent. I'm calling because we have a situation that requires your expertise." Elena's expression turned serious. "One of our portfolio companies is facing a hostile takeover attempt. Blackstone Dynamics they're using. Exactly the same tactics Victoria used to use at Meridian. Aggressive debt restructuring, asset stripping, mass layoffs." Marcus felt a familiar surge of protective anger. "What kind of company?" "Clean energy technology. Solar panel manufacturing, primarily. The target is Solaris Industries. They've developed breakthrough efficiency improvements that could revolutionize the industry. And Blackstone wants to break them up for parts," Victoria said, her voice tight with understanding. "I've seen their playbook. They'll sell the patents to oil companies who'll bury the technology." Elena nodded. "The Solaris management team reached out to us for help. They're brilliant engineers, but don't understand corporate warfare. They need experienced leadership to mount an effective defense." Marcus looked at Victoria, seeing his own thoughts reflected in her expression. This was exactly the kind of fight they had built Pacific Northwest Financial to win. "What's the timeline?" Victoria asked. Blackstone's tender offer becomes effective in 60 days. After that, they'll have controlling interest and can implement whatever changes they want. Hostile takeover defense, Marcus mused. Not exactly our core competency. Maybe not, Victoria said slowly. But I know Blackstone's tactics better than anyone. I used to work with their senior partners when I was more like them, Elena smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Marcus, would the Pacific Northwest be interested in leading a white knight acquisition of Solaris Industries? Marcus felt the familiar thrill of a complex strategic challenge. What kind of investment are we talking about? $800 million for a controlling stake. But Solaris's technology portfolio is worth at least $2 billion in the right hands. And in the wrong hands? Worthless, or worse, actively suppressed to protect existing market interests. Marcus exchanged glances with Victoria. 6 months ago, they had been enemies. Now they were partners in building something that mattered. The symmetry was perfect. Send us the due diligence package, Marcus said. We'll have an answer within a week. Already on its way. And Marcus? This could be exactly the kind of high-profile success that establishes Pacific Northwest as a major player in the acquisition market. As Elena signed off, Victoria leaned back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. 6 months ago I would have advised against this. Too risky, too complex, too much potential downside. And now? Now, I think it's exactly the kind of fight worth having. David versus Goliath, except this time David has a billion-dollar slingshot, Marcus laughed. I like that metaphor. Though technically, we'd be more like David with a really good lawyer and unlimited ammunition. Even better. The Solaris Industries headquarters in Portland looked like something from a science fiction movie, all glass and solar panels and gleaming metal surfaces that seemed to capture and reflect light from impossible angles. Marcus and Victoria arrived for their due diligence meeting on a crisp October morning, the kind of day that made the Pacific Northwest feel like the center of the universe. Dr. Sarah Chen, Solaris's founder and CEO, met them in a conference room overlooking the Willamette River. At 43, she had the intense focus of someone who had spent years translating theoretical physics into practical applications. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct, and her presentation materials were organized with military precision. Thank you for coming, she began without preamble. I assume you've reviewed our preliminary financials. Impressive numbers, Marcus replied. 40% year-over-year growth, industry-leading efficiency ratings, and a technology portfolio that could revolutionize solar energy adoption. Then you understand why Blackstone wants to acquire us. To suppress your technology and protect their fossil fuel investments, Victoria said bluntly. I've seen their playbook before. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. Exactly. They've already indicated plans to rationalize our research and development operations, corporate speak for shutting down our innovation pipeline. What makes your technology different? Marcus asked. Dr. Chen activated a wall-mounted display showing side-by-side efficiency comparisons. Current commercial solar panels convert about 20% of sunlight into electricity. Our new photovoltaic cells achieve 37% efficiency, nearly double the industry standard. That's revolutionary, Victoria said, studying the technical specifications. At that efficiency level, solar becomes cost-competitive with fossil fuels, even without subsidies. Exactly. Which is why companies like Blackstone want to control the technology, to delay its deployment until their existing investments are fully depreciated. Marcus felt the familiar surge of righteous anger that had driven him to challenge Victoria's corrupt leadership at Meridian. This was about more than corporate profits. It was about the future of sustainable energy. What's your timeline for commercial deployment? 18 months to full production capability. But only if we maintain our current research funding and development schedule. And under Blackstone's ownership, Dr. Chen's smile was bitter. There. Projections show optimized development timelines, extending to 5 years or more. Translated, they'll slow-walk the technology until it's no longer disruptive. Victoria leaned forward. Dr. Chen, what would you need to accelerate development instead of delaying it? Additional capital for manufacturing infrastructure expanded. Research teams and aggressive market deployment strategies. With proper funding, we could achieve mass production in 12 months instead of 18. Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Pacific Northwest Financial had been created to pursue, using capital to drive positive change rather than simply maximizing returns. What's Blackstone offering your shareholders? Marcus asked. $47 per share. About a 20% premium over current market price. And your assessment of fair value? Dr. Chen's expression hardened. With proper development and deployment, our technology portfolio alone is worth $60 per share. Add the manufacturing capability and market position, and we're looking at $80 to $90 per share within 3 years. Victoria pulled out her tablet and began running calculations. Marcus, if we offered $55 per share, a 40% premium, and committed to accelerated development funding, we'd need about $900 million in acquisition capital, plus another $200 million for development investment, Marcus finished. Significant, but manageable. Dr. Chen sat back, hope and caution warring in her expression. You'd really be willing to invest that kind of money in accelerating clean energy technology? Dr. Chen, Marcus said seriously, 6 months ago, I was trapped in a corporate culture that prioritized quarterly profits over long-term value creation. I've learned that real success comes from building things that matter, not just for shareholders, but for society. And frankly, Victoria added, beating Blackstone at their own game would be extremely satisfying on a personal level. The Pacific Northwest Financial boardroom had been transformed into a war room for the Solaris acquisition. Charts covered the walls, financial models filled multiple screens, and the core team worked with the focused intensity of a military operation. Blackstone's tender offer expires in 43 days, Elena reported via video conference. They currently control about 15% of outstanding shares through preliminary agreements. What's our approach? Marcus asked. Direct shareholder outreach, Victoria replied. We identify major institutional investors and present them with a superior offer backed by a credible development plan. Jennifer Walsh looked up from her legal documents. The regulatory approval process could take weeks. Securities and Exchange Commission, antitrust review, international investment notifications. Already in progress, Priya Sharma confirmed from her law office. I've been working with Solaris's legal team to expedite all required filings. Marcus studied the timeline projections. It's going to be close. We need at least 60% shareholder approval to guarantee success, and Blackstone isn't going to make this easy. Actually, David Kim said from his computer terminal, I think we have an advantage they don't know about. What kind of advantage? David's smile was mysterious. Blackstone's strategy relies on maintaining control of information flow. They're probably planning to release negative research reports, spread concerns about Solaris's financial stability, maybe even suggest that the technology doesn't work as advertised. Standard hostile takeover tactics, Victoria agreed. I've used them myself. Right, but what if we counter with complete transparency? Full disclosure of Solaris's technology. Specifications, independent third-party verification of efficiency claims, real-time financial reporting. Marcus saw where David was heading. Turn their information warfare against them. Exactly. Blackstone's campaign depends on creating doubt and uncertainty. We create clarity and confidence. Elena's voice cut through the discussion. There's something else to consider. Solaris isn't the only clean energy company facing pressure from traditional energy interests. If we can successfully defend them and accelerate their technology deployment, it sends a message to the entire industry. What kind of message? Marcus asked. That sustainable innovation doesn't have to be crushed by established interests. That there are financial players willing to support disruptive technology rather than suppress it. Victoria nodded slowly. A proof of concept for responsible capitalism. More than that, Elena replied. A template for how financial services companies can drive positive social change while generating superior returns. Marcus felt the weight of possibility settling around him. This was bigger than revenge against Victoria, bigger than proving himself in the corporate world. This was about using financial tools to build a better future. All right, he said finally. Let's save Solaris Industries. And let's make sure everyone knows we're doing it. The Blackstone Dynamics Conference. Room on the 42nd floor of the Columbia Center was designed to intimidate. Dark mahogany walls, leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars, and floor-to-ceiling windows that reduced humans to insignificant specks against the urban landscape. Marcus found himself oddly unmoved by the power theater as he followed Victoria into the meeting. 6 months of building Pacific Northwest Financial had given him a different perspective on true authority. It came from competence and character, not from expensive furniture and psychological manipulation. Marcus, Victoria. The voice belonged to James Blackstone himself, a silver-haired man in his 60s, whose $1,000 suit couldn't quite disguise the predatory gleam in his eyes. I understand you've been making inquiries about our Solaris acquisition. We have, Marcus replied evenly. Quite serious inquiries, actually. Blackstone gestured to seats across from his own position at the head of a conference table large enough to land a helicopter on. I'm curious about your interest. Clean energy isn't exactly Pacific Northwest Financial's area of expertise. We believe in diversifying into high-growth sectors, Victoria said smoothly. Solaris represents significant untapped potential.